Hello and welcome to the Boro Breakdown podcast, an opposition preview show with Jonny, Dana and Tom, and our guest for the day, Ben from the Tylehurst End, who is here to give us a perspective on Boro's game against Reading at the Select Carleton. Oh, look, it's the Madstad, the Madejski Stadium on Saturday. But before we start, I just want to know how you're all feeling, and how are you feeling in 3 words. So, Tom, how are you feeling in 3 words at the minute?
I'm going to use the same 3 words that I used for the one we did with the Shoreham view last week. Need a win. Like I thought it was coming last night against Stoke, and then we just let it slip in the last minute. But it can't take away from the fact that we played some great stuff, and especially last night. I think it would just calm quite a few nerves if we could get that first win of the season. So yeah, we're definitely going there on Saturday, knowing that we need the 3 points to really kick things off.
Dana?
I would say something very similar. I'm going to go itching for a win because I think, obviously, as Tom said there, we do need to calm the nerves down a little bit. Boro Twitter is going into complete and utter meltdown, given the fact that we haven't won yet. But yeah, hopefully we can get the win soon, and hopefully it's on Saturday. Sorry,
Ben. Ben, how are you feeling in 3 words? I'm assuming you're on a high from last night's win.
I mean, honestly, it was a huge shot last night. Great to have the response, but quite an emphatic performance from us. And I was telling you guys off air, it was probably the best game I've seen in sort of 3-4 years, be it home or away, to be honest. So delighted, surprised, optimistic for once as well as a Reading fan. So fingers crossed we're on the way up this time.
Yeah, it was a big win as well. And I think for me, it's going to be, I am gutted. I was adamant that Boro. I could not believe Boro last night let a win slip just from our grasp. We dominated the game and came away with just a point. But let's move on because Dana, we'll kick things off with you around Reading.
Yeah, Ben, I just want to kind of ask you what your assessment's been so far this season. Obviously, it's very early days, but 8th in the league, 2 wins, 2 losses, out of the cup. I think every championship club is, to be fair. How have you been feeling about Reading's start to the season so far?
I think the term emotional rollercoaster is overused in football, but really that's kind of summed us up in 4 league games. Really, we obviously went into the season. With all due respect to Blackpool, very, very optimistic about picking up some points there in the first game. Didn't show up first 45 minutes, a little bit more composed in the second 45. We then have a situation where we have to come behind, which we don't normally do against Cardiff at home the next week. Get knocked out the cup by a very good Stevenage side on the night. An absolute hell show of a performance against Rotherham on Saturday, which before the game I said I'd settle for a draw based on where we are with the players we've got available, and obviously we couldn't have been further from it really. 4 goals in 45 minutes was just again shambolic really, and then to have last night where it was we were looking for some sort of reaction, again keeping a clean sheet would have been good. I mean, start of the game I said to our guys, look, we'll settle, or I'll settle for not conceding in the first 10 minutes, which is pretty much what we've done in every game this season. And we didn't, and we went on to be, very, very strong across the pitch. So it's literally been up and down. To sit 8th is, it's probably the highest we've been for sort of 3 or 4 years as well. I know that obviously won't continue because it's very early days, but we've yet to settle into a rhythm, and realistically, you don't know. As either Reading fans and for you guys as well, you don't know what kind of Reading you're going to get on Saturday. It's very, very difficult to predict which team will turn up, but the key thing now is getting consistency from the group and trying to move that forward and ultimately achieve our main aim, which is to stay in the division this season.
I was going to say, I hope the Rotherham Reading turns up, to be honest. For our sake, we need a win.
Speaking of staying in the division, Paul Ince obviously took over last season, managed to keep you in the division. How's he doing at the moment, and thoughts on the signings he's made this summer?
It's very, very difficult to assess because he came in sort of February time, probably it was deemed to be sort of interim manager, caretaker sort of stuff. And it was probably in my 30 years of watching Reading, 30 plus years. I know I don't look old enough, but I am, trust me. It was probably the lowest I'd seen us off the pitch, on the pitch, everything. The club was, we were rock bottom really, and the only thing that was really kind of keeping us going was the fact we weren't actually bottom of the table, but everything else was just nothing. So he came in with a shell of a team, really dysfunctional, all over the place, and I say kept us up, but we stayed 21st for about 4 or 5 months and didn't move. But that was the end result, really. That's where we needed to stay and stay up. This season, obviously it's very, very difficult to be critical of the EFL because the club's been mishandled for a long period of time. But our hands have been very, very much tied in the transfer market. I think between him and Mark Bowen and a guy called Brian Carey, who's come in from having spent 6 or 7 years at Spurs, they've done a very, very good job to get the players that we've got in, whether that's 1-year deals, on loan, whatever it is. It's difficult to judge him. I interviewed him last week for the Supporters Trust, and he said all the right things. Very, very clear in his expectations of the team. But then obviously we turn in a performance like we did on Saturday. So it's very, very difficult to assess him. I think he's been unfairly written off by lots of the media. Personally, I like him. I like the way he talks. He's very hard hitting. He knows exactly what to say to get the fan base going. Obviously still got his detractors because he was out of work for sort of 7 or 8 years, and he wouldn't have been first on anyone's list, really, not let alone Reading fans, but anyone in the industry would not have picked him to be our new manager. So the team is showing signs of resilience under Ince, and last night was a perfect example of that. Whether he fired them up, whether the players did it themselves, not sure. I don't think any Reading fan really cares at the moment, but he's certainly not going to be the long-term solution to what we need. But if he can keep us in the division this season, and ultimately see out the season as our manager, then he would have done probably more than a lot of Reading fans would have expected him to do, really.
Just going on to one of the signings, probably one of our not so favourite pastimes from last year, talking about Joe Lumley. How's he been so far?
So obviously there was quite a big. I don't know if you can have a negative fanfare, but there was a lot of that in the summer when he joined, and we saw some of the compilations that you guys had put together, and other Middlesbrough fans are basically saying like stay well clear, but he's come in pre-season. He looked very, very good. Obviously it is pre-season, so it's difficult to tell, but he looked like he settled in well. Communicated really clearly, was able to organise the fairly consistent defence that he had in front of him. First couple of games, not a problem, very, very straightforward, sort of, coming in 6 or 7 on the player ratings, really, sort of very average, average Joe, if you like. And then, Rotherham, we get the situation where it was just a horror show for him, and his head just went completely. You saw I can't remember if it was the second or third goal, the shot from Lindsay that went underneath his body it's just basic goalkeeping, and I think the panic for Reading fans was that obviously we'd seen the stuff that he'd done for you guys, and he just collapsed. Whereas last night he came out. To be fair, the fans backed him, or most fans backed him. A lot of support there. Made a cracking save at 1-0 to deny Blackburn, which potentially could have been a bit of a problem if they'd equalised at that point in the game. And he was solid last night. So a little bit like Reading, you don't know what Joe Lumley you're going to get, and we're only sort of 4 games into the season. I think the problem for him is that because his mistakes were so well highlighted by your fan base, it's put the creepers into ours, and I think he needs to get a solid situation where he's in performance now in terms of getting this consistency. Obviously, he won't feature on Saturday. We've got a Australian guy come in and will take his place for that game. Now, whether or not he keeps his place after that, who knows? But it was a big call for Paul Ince to keep Lumley in last night, and to his credit and to both their credit, it worked.
Yeah, I think with Lumley, like he will have a game where he'll be outstanding, and then he'll just put in a performance like he did at Reading. You just think, oh my god, like what on earth is this? Like he's so like it's so bipolar, really. It's like it's just one end he's great, one end he's just horrendous, and it's very difficult to judge him. I think, but I feel like there's going to be a lot of discussion around him, especially on like your podcast and your pages and all your fan groups. I think Joe Lumley's going to be on a number of conversations probably throughout the season, but. The question I kind of want to ask you, Ben, is what does success look like for Reading this year? Because obviously you've been saying there 21st throughout the season, throughout last season. It's been really difficult off the field as well. But what do you think the success looks like this year?
So the general consensus will be staying up. That will be, we just almost got the hashtag trending a couple of weeks ago with the 3 worst teams hashtag, because that's all we need right now. We need 3 worst teams and staying in the division. For me personally, our academy has always been kind of lauded, really. That's not the case now because we've lost our Category 1 status, which is a whole separate issue altogether. But it's been underused. We haven't really had the players break through that we'd want, and we need to get this balance now of kind of staying in the division but bringing through those younger players to be able to kind of build some sort of legacy and some sort of foundation to move forward, because we can't. As a football club, we can't keep flirting with relegation. We can't keep sort of getting in there by the skin of our teeth. And I also contradict myself, but hoping for 3 worst teams like we did last year. We got lucky. We got really lucky last year because of, point deduction to Derby and Barnsley weren't great, and obviously Peterborough too. So we have to stay in this league with the players we've got. We've got to try and keep them fit and keep a consistent group together, because I think the average age of our bench sort of last night and against Rotherham was like 12 or something. It was just absolutely absurd. So the ultimate success is staying up. Mid-table would look like absolute glory days for us this season. And it's not all doom and gloom, because we've got some good young players, but they're not ready to go in the sharp end of the Championship as with many clubs, really. We've just got to be, sensible with the restrictions. We've just got to take our medicine and move on from it and see where we are next season. And I think as long as we can stay in the Championship, you'll probably see quite a big overhaul of the club from top to bottom the next pre-season, really. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But ultimately, it's staying in the league.
Where do you think you'll end up? If you had a gun to your head, where do you think you'll end up?
Well, I've predicted consistently 19th, so I'm going to go with 19th because it gives us a little bit of breathing space, and it gives us a 2-place improvement on last season. But I would, anything above 21st is double thumbs up, really.
Yeah.
Stylistically, then, how do Reading set up?
I mean, that's a great question. Again, you could have the Reading that turned up against Rotherham. I mean, formation-wise, it's fairly settled. So we tend to play, 5-3-2 with the 2 up the top. It tends to be 1 and then 1 sort of with Shane Long forward facing and Tom Ince just dropping off him a little bit. Last night, because we were on the attack quite a lot, of reverted to a 3-5-2, if that makes sense. So there's a little bit of interchange with the wing backs. Junior Hoylett's been kind of filling in everywhere. So his versatility is phenomenal, has been phenomenal this season. Obviously chipped in with a goal last night. But if we can get him up the pitch a little bit more, he causes players problems. There's been players that have filled in sort of 2 or 3 positions in a game, really, because that's where we are. So we're kind of fairly settled with that 5-3-2 formation. We've just signed a guy called Loom, who's come in from Porto on loan, and he's been very, very good since he came in. Last night it was exceptional, really, for what was essentially his kind of second full game for us in the league. So we've got some good individual players. Obviously Tom Ince, his work rate is phenomenal. Needs to kind of chip in with a few more kind of or more consistently attacking returns. Defence is kind of the key, really, that's been unsettled. We brought in Hutchinson in the summer, but he's been injured since sort of pre-season. We've got Dan obviously coming back from injury, who hasn't featured for a long time. So overall we've got some good players, but it's just that consistency that we're lacking. Stylistically, that they are working a lot harder than they did last season, in my opinion. But whether or not we're going to be able to keep up that intensity, moving forward, I don't know. It's a difficult balance of players like Shane Long, who's 34, 35. You've got Jeff Hendrick on loan, who kind of has been fair to middling since he's come in. It's just about keeping them fit and getting them into the groove and getting them to play regularly, really. But I'd like to see the same Reading on Saturday that we saw last night in terms of attack minding and being a bit more pressing to teams and not giving them a minute. So that's kind of the ideal. But then we can have a situation where defensively we have massive lapses like we did against Rotherham and collapse like a warm Easter egg, basically. So it becomes very, very difficult to judge where we actually are. If we can string some results together, then I'll get back to you and give you a more comprehensive answer on that one, I guess.
If you could pinpoint then one player, I know you mentioned a few there, Hoylett and Ince and Loom, who would be the star man, the player that Boro fans should look out for from a Reading perspective?
I mean, at the moment, I would say it is Tom Ince. He's been sort of a man reborn, really. He was with us the latter part of last season on loan from Stoke. He got injured against Hull, sort of a really bad tackle that ended his season pretty early. But he provided a bit more of an outlet. He provided that kind of the energy that we were lacking, maybe. We've obviously got Lucas Jow. He's coming back from injury. I think he played 8-9 minutes last night and scored in that time. Very, very good finish. We've also got a lad called Tyrese Forner who again is quite is able to defend in midfield but also drive the ball forward as well. So we've got kind of danger men all over the pitch, really. But for me at the moment, it's Tom Ince, because he's been consistently our highest rated player in terms of performances over the season, for sure.
You mentioned there having danger men in all areas of the pitch. Where, from a Reading perspective, do you think the game's going to be won and lost on Saturday?
It's got to be the midfield again. The defence is fairly makeshift at the moment. We've got two young guys, both called Tom, actually, who are at the back. And we've got Andy Yeardom, who normally plays right back and right wing back, but he's had to shift into the middle of defence, really, or part of that three, rather, the right hand side of the three. So we've got to stand up defensively. You guys have been scoring goals. We know that there's going to be threat across your team in terms of winning goals, and we've really got to, if we can really get a foothold in the game the first 10-15 minutes and kind of hang in there, really, because that's always been our danger zone this season. It's really about the three in midfield that we've got, protecting the back sort of three sort of centre backs that we've got, and really getting a foothold in the game, not being afraid to put in the tackles, trying to use the outlets a little bit more in terms of the wing backs and the kind of wingers that we've got. But it's very, very difficult in the Championship to predict anything. We saw some crazy results again last night, and no one's really got into a groove. Up until last night, Blackburn were 100% great, but again, it's very difficult to know how good they really are when they chucked in a performance like they did last night. So, for us, it's really about that protection in the defence and making sure that we get a foothold in midfield and allow the two outside of Hendrick to push forward a little bit more and support the attackers, because very quickly with Reading we can get isolated with Tom Ince and Shane Long just up front on their own with no real support.
Okay, then let's look at predictions, because everyone loves a prediction. A win, loss, draw, whatever. Curries and chips match abandoned. Who knows? Anything can happen in a game of football on a Saturday. I'll give you a breather first, Ben. I'll go to you, Tom. What's going to be your prediction for Saturday?
Well, I'm going on Saturday, and I went last year. I went last year as well, coincidentally on the same day as the Anthony Joshua fight, which is the same day this year as well. So I'm hoping it's absolutely not going to be a repeat of last year, and it would be the other way around. So I'm going to say my 4.5 hour drive will be worth it, and a 1-0 win.
Okay, 1-0 win. Dana, what are you going to go for?
I think I'm going to go for 2-1, Boro. And I think we have a decent, before last season, I think we do have a decent record at the Madejski. So maybe we could get back to that. Yeah, I'm going to go for 2-1.
I still have PTSD from Reading 3, Middlesbrough 2, under Gareth Southgate in his first game. And I think it was Reading's first game in the Premier League, I think, as well, if I remember correctly. Ben, what are you going to go for?
I think there'll be goals in it. I think, based on, as I said, with your results, I think you scored 2 in every league game so far this season.
I don't know how, but we're doing it.
Yeah, West Brom was 1-1, wasn't it? I think so. I mean, look, you've got goals in you, is what I think and what I know. So I'm going to go. From our point of view, we need to see progress. So we've got to get points out of the game. I'm going to go 2-2. Stick my neck out. I think there'll be goals in it. I don't think we won't have come across an attack. I know we obviously conceded 4 goals, all due respect to Rotherham, but in terms of the players you've got and the options you've got, I don't see us keeping a clean sheet. The goalkeeper coming in is fairly raw to this division. He's potentially a little bit uncertain. So I'm going to go 2-2.
Okay, 2-2. So Tom 1-0, Dana 2-1, Ben 2-2. I'm going to go 3-0 Boro. I just feel like we need a result. We need a result, and I feel like Wilder's going to go, you know what? We need a win. Just try and win, please. If we don't win, we don't win. But I'm going to go for a bold one. But Ben, thank you so much for coming on. I really do appreciate it. It was so insightful, and to get really good. It was a really good picture of where Reading are at and where they're going this season. But for right now, guys, thank you very much for joining me. But this has been the Opposition Preview Show, where the Boro Breakdown podcast, and this was Ollie Boro Match Day Chatter in a pod. Up the Boro Breakdown.